Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our December 2023 Lunch and Learn webinar with CARP Ottawa. I'm going to give folks a moment to enter the virtual space as we move into opening remarks for today's exciting session. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Small Homes, Big Changes, Bringing the Greenhouse Model to Canada, co-hosted by FCO and CARP Ottawa. I'm Sam Peck, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Executive Director of Family Councils of Ontario. And I'm very pleased to be providing opening remarks for today's session. Today's guest speaker is Alex Spanko, the Director of Communications and Marketing Center for Innovation at the Greenhouse Project and Pioneer Network. We always start our sessions with a land acknowledgement because FCO's work, the work of long-term care homes, family councils, family caregivers, takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across the province we now call Ontario. And speaking on behalf of our team, we're thankful to be able to live and work on this land. First Nations peoples were the original inhabitants of the land we now call Canada. And in fact, there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover just the territory of Ontario. And there are Indigenous peoples all across the country. With territories, other agreements, and on unceded lands as well. I'm coming to you today from Hamilton, and the city of Hamilton is situated upon traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. It's also land that's covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Now, that was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. And since that agreement was made, descendants of settlers, such as myself, and other Indigenous nations and communities have been invited to participate in this agreement to care for, to protect the natural and other resources around the Great Lakes. We need them in order to live. We need fresh water. We need the food that farmers provide. And so we all have a relationship to the land and can participate in taking care of it. The land's also covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase of 1792, which was between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We at FCO are appreciative of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to the strength of long-term care homes and communities across the province. Acknowledging the land is an Indigenous protocol that's used to express gratitude to those who reside here and to honor the Indigenous people who have lived and worked on this land historically and continue to do so presently. It allows us the opportunity to appreciate the unique role and relationship that each of us has with the land and can provide a gentle reminder of the broader perspectives that can expand our understanding to encompass the long-standing rich history of the land and our privileged role in residing here. You can learn more about the people, territories, and the languages of the land on which you live, work, and care at a great website. You've probably heard me talk about it before, native-land.ca. You can just type in your address, your city, and you can learn so much about the land you're on. As part of our commitment to reconciliation and truth and reconciliation, we are providing opportunities, educational opportunities to our staff to learn more about our shared history, the Indigenous presence and land rights, the impacts of colonialism, and the harms that have been and continue to be inflicted on Indigenous peoples. While we're early in our journey towards true reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and it'll always be a journey, There isn't a point where we're really going to be able to say we're done. We've committed to establishing mutually respectful relationships with Indigenous people across the province because we're grateful for the opportunity to work in communities across Ontario. So we hope that you will join us in reflecting on the land you're on and thinking about meaningful ways to contribute towards truth and reconciliation, to support relationships, to support land rights, and work towards justice across Ontario. Before I turn things over to my co-host today, just a few logistics. You'll notice you're all in listen-only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. If you encounter any technical issues, please feel free to use the chat to communicate with the hosts or respond to the email you got from Zoom with your access link. We've protected time today for an interactive question and answer period at the end of the presentation. And at that time, we invite you to use the Q&A box to pose your questions to today's guest speaker. And again, only use the chat feature if you're having any technical issues. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. And the release of the link will be in our e-bulletin, so stay tuned for that. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to today's co-host, Kathy Wright of the CARP Ottawa chapter. Kathy, over to you.
Thank you, Sam, and many thanks to FCO staff for their wonderful collaboration on all 4 of our fall webinars this year. We're hoping we can continue this beneficial working relationship in 2024. As some of you already know, for the past 4 years, CARP Ottawa's working group on long-term care has been working with other CARP chapters and other like-minded organizations in Ontario to keep the conversation alive about the positive opportunities that exist to support both those living and working in long-term care homes today. And it's encouraging to learn of long-term care homes that continue to transition from institutions to homes. But although the number is increasing, it is still a very small percentage of the 636 long-term care homes in Ontario. The general public and the media, unfortunately, have already forgotten about the horrific tragedies brought to light during the pandemic. We must reboot the conversation before it is too late and the cycle starts all over again. Now, you can help us by bringing this conversation alive again by sharing the information from today's webinar with your local MPP, MP, or city councillor, and or on any social media platforms you might be on. And if you're interested, or if you belong to a provincial organization that may be interested in working with us, please let us know. You can email us at ottawa@carp.ca, or you can contact us through our website at www.changeltcnow.ca. And I now have the distinct pleasure of introducing Alex Spanko. Alex has worn many hats. He was the founding editor of the Chicago-based Skilled Nursing News, helping to launch the Business Focus trade publication in 2017. He's also worked as a journalist for many local newspapers and a technical writer and editor in the financial sector. Then, as of 2021, Alex took on the position of Director of Communications and Marketing for the Center of Innovation, the nonprofit parent of the Greenhouse Project and Pioneer Network. And Alex will talk to us today about small homes, big change, bringing the greenhouse model to Canada. We are very excited to hear about more innovative long-term care homes possibly coming to Canada and to Ontario as well. So thank you so much, Alex, for taking the time to be with us today. And now the mic is all yours.
Great. Excuse me. It's my pleasure to be here. Let me just share my screen really quickly so I can get today's presentation up for you all. So today's presentation is Small Homes, Big Change, Bringing the Greenhouse Model to Canada. I'm talking to you today from where I live and work full-time remotely, just north of New York City in Westchester County, White Plains, also the traditional home of the Wesqueguet people. We are based, our organization, the Greenhouse Project and Pioneer Network, we are based in the Baltimore area, but we have a presence across the country and across the world. And I do have some exciting news about at least one organization in Canada that's starting to explore some options. But before we get into today's presentation, I really want to start with a question that I like to ask, that I like to start all of my presentations with, which is, what would you need? So what would you need if you if one day, think about it, you may need to go into some type of communal care setting, or you need additional assistance? What do you need to feel normal? What do you need to feel fulfilled? What do you need to feel connected to the people and places and things that you love? And so for me, that would include space to have friends over. I like to host, especially now around the holidays. I'm excited. My wife's family is coming over for Hanukkah this weekend, so that's always fun. I'd want fun, welcoming space for people to visit. I would also need a big TV so I could keep up with sports. I'm a big baseball fan and hockey fan, so I would need my baseball in the summer, my hockey in the winter. I would need a bunch of books, and I would also need to be not woken up too early, because I am a night owl. Everyone on the team, especially getting to know me over the last 2 years, knows that I'm not very useful before about 9 in the morning, because I'm not a morning person. I do my best work and my best thinking at night. So those are all things that I would need. And I encourage you all to think about that over the course of the presentation, because so much of, I think, people's, rightfully so, problems with the long-term care system boils down to not feeling any level of autonomy, feeling no control, feeling isolated from the things and the people and the activities that really make life worth living, right? We strip so much of that away from older people and people with disabilities who go into institutional settings, and we don't really think of it as a priority. So, excuse me. So these are the greenhouse principles. And before I go through them, I just want to give you all a brief overview of our organization. So since 2003, the Greenhouse Project has worked to change sort of the physical and philosophical design of long-term care settings by focusing on the construction and renovation of small homes. So small home alternatives to traditional nursing homes. All private rooms, all adjoining private bathrooms, ample outdoor space that residents are allowed to access at any time without having to ask permission. A kitchen, a residential kitchen, where meals are prepared fresh daily, and a consistent staffing assignment under a kind of novel structure. So I'll get into those details, but I also wanted to talk about Pioneer Network. Back in 2021, or 2022 now, I guess, I'm losing track of time. It's going by so fast. In 2022, we formally merged with Pioneer Network, which is a similar organization that has focused more on that philosophy side. So they have really focused on what's called culture change. You may be familiar with them. It's not necessarily about changing the physical space of a nursing home, but changing the care philosophy to focus on those things that I mentioned that I would need. Person-directed care, allowing more autonomy and dignity. So we merged in 2022 because a lot of our work was very similar. In fact, we had done cultural transformation work with organizations that were not able to build new or substantially renovate. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And together we are under the Center for Innovation banner. So it's a lot of information, but I just wanted to kind of lay that out. And I'll talk more about the Pioneer Network principles a bit later in this presentation. So these are the three core values of the Greenhouse Project. One is real home. They don't just feel like home. Oops, excuse me. They don't just feel like home. They are home, which is a crucial distinction. One of my pet peeves and one of our internal pet peeves is when people describe home-like nursing communities. Would you want to live in something that's home-like, or would you want to live at home? Just like, would you want to eat something that's described as food-like, or would you like to eat real food? So it's not a fake home. It's not a simulacrum of a home. It's a real home with all of those design features that I mentioned. Meaningful life. That's another key part, and it was part of what was really the driving principles behind the foundation of the Greenhouse Project in 2003 by Dr. Bill Thomas, which is this idea that elders were fighting the epidemic, not just of poor health or poor quality services, but loneliness, isolation, and boredom. Those were sort of the three epidemics that he identified in nursing homes, in the early to mid 1990s. before he launched the greenhouse project. So meaningful life is at the center of the greenhouse model. It's making sure that every day in a greenhouse home revolves around what the residents themselves actually want to do. So often, and I'm sure this is common in Canada, just as it's common here, the way nursing homes are run are for the convenience and the efficiency and often the profit of the operator, not necessarily what's best for the people living and working there. So we really try to focus on that meaningful life piece. And then empowered staff. I'll get into the universal caregiving model a little bit later in this presentation, but keep in mind that the way, as we discuss this, the people who work in greenhouse homes are empowered to make decisions that really rolls into meaningful life because they're empowered to make the kinds of decisions about meals, about activities, about sleep and wake times, about all of the sort of rhythms of your day that you wouldn't want someone messing with. The staff is empowered to make decisions that support that meaningful life. And it also puts the focus on and gives the power to the people who are doing the most direct work with elders. The people, they're certified nursing assistants here in the States, the direct bedside and tableside and picnic tableside care, whatever you want to call it. Those are the folks who have the most power and influence in the home, not sort of that traditional top-down hierarchy. So what I love about these presentations is showing you big pictures. I always say that I fully was on board with the greenhouse model when I joined in 2021, enough that I took a job there because I believe in the mission. But I didn't really click. It didn't really click for me fully until I was able to go visit one, which happened a little bit later in 2021 due to COVID. And suddenly everything clicked even more when I was able to walk into this small single family home that looked a lot like, the one that I grew up in the suburbs of Long Island, where it had a kitchen and a living room and a garage that smelled like the garage in the house where I grew up, a garage that had bikes and Christmas decorations and miscellaneous stuff that you keep in your garage. That really clicked for me. And I always say that if I had an unlimited budget, I would want to fly everybody to the nearest greenhouse home to you so you can experience it yourself, especially if you're an operator or a policymaker, to really see that difference. But the best I can do for you today is to show you some pictures. And I wish we could all get in the plane and head down to one of these, but hopefully these pictures will at least help. Picture on the lower right there, you wouldn't necessarily be able to determine that that was licensed as a nursing home in the United States unless you were told that. It looks like a single family suburban neighborhood. You see the woman walking there on her own, leaving the community and leaving the home itself and being able to experience and explore the outdoors. That connection to nature is very, very important. As you see there in the upper left, the gentleman is gardening. Many of our greenhouse homes have gardens. In fact, we encourage it. They're maintained by both residents and staff alike. In a lot of the homes, they use the garden, fresh vegetables that are grown in the garden and fruit, herbs, whatever, are used in the food that is actually prepared each day in the homes. And there you see the gentleman there with his grandsons taking a walk outside. That connection to nature is very important. I don't have the latest data on it, but I know that if you were to survey nursing home residents, an alarming number of people would say that they had not been outside in a year. I cannot imagine that. And I had some direct experience with this recently where my wife's grandmother was in a nursing home briefly for rehabilitative care. And her number one complaint was, it's so stuffy in here, I can't open the windows, there's no fresh air. And that is such a basic human right. I work from home. I go outside and take calls in my backyard probably 3 times a day just to walk around a little bit and get some air. I can't imagine being told that I couldn't get fresh air for one day, let alone a whole year. But that's something that a lot of people who live in long-term care communities deal with. And it's something that the greenhouse model is explicitly designed to combat, make sure people get to go outside, whether that's on their own, whether that's with someone to support them, whether that's with an assistive device, any way that they can get outside. That's a key part of daily life in greenhouse homes. And then again, a real home. What you're seeing there is a bedroom, representative resident room at a greenhouse home. Sometimes some jurisdictions in the United States don't allow you to bring a bed from home, for instance. Some still require the bed to be on wheels, but in this jurisdiction, it's all furniture from home where this photo was taken. Up there on the top right, you've got a sun porch where you can have people come over to visit. And like I said at the beginning, that is a key consideration. We're not talking about if you are living in a nursing home, you don't want to have the only space to host guests to be in your resident room with someone else there. I just experienced that visiting my visiting my wife's grandmother on our Thanksgiving a couple of weeks ago. We were having a conversation and there was just another person in the room trying to watch TV. It's not welcoming, it's not friendly, it's not real, it's not home. And so we very deliberately make sure that our greenhouse homes have those kinds of gathering spaces where people can come visit and just feel like you're having a normal visit back when you lived in a different type of home, a private home. Crucially, this design is also adaptable. The greenhouse model started in the American South. The first homes opened 20 years ago this past spring in Tupelo, Mississippi, the birthplace of Elvis. So Tupelo is now known for the birthplace of two worldwide phenomenon, Elvis and the Greenhouse Project. But so because it was in the American South where there tends to be a lot more land, that single family style that I showed you a few slides earlier tends to be the predominant, but that doesn't mean that you can't build vertically. What you have right there is a 3-story greenhouse community on the bottom right of your screen. So each floor there is its own greenhouse home, self-contained greenhouse home. You notice the screened in porches on the right side of the building. That's the outdoor space. So instead of a ground floor patio, not obviously if you have a multi-story building, you can't have a ground floor patio on all floors, but you have a screened in porch where people can go out and enjoy the weather, eat, drink, be merry outdoors. And when we say that each individual floor is in a vertical type model is its own contained greenhouse home, we mean it. If you look at the photo on the left there, that gentleman is waiting for the elevator. When the elevator doors open, you end up with a front door right there that is designed to look like the front door of a regular house. You have to ring the doorbell to be allowed in. You can't just walk in because you can't just walk into somebody's home. And you ring the doorbell and a member of the staff lets you in. This particular one, I believe, is in Alabama that we see on the left. But I've also visited our vertical greenhouse in Detroit, and it's the same thing. You get off the elevator, and even if you work there, even if you work for the greenhouse project and you're visiting and taking a tour, you still have to wait to be allowed in because you can't just come into my house without ringing the doorbell. So how come people can just go into elders' homes without ringing the doorbell when that home is a nursing community? So it's a small thing, but I love that example because it really shows that the care and the attention and the fact that you're not just changing the physical space, you're changing the entire philosophy of what it means to live in a nursing home, that it's still a private residence that you can't just barge into the way, if you're in a traditional nursing home, the elevator doors open, you're in the middle of a nurse's station, all the doors are open, you can hear everything that's going on, everyone can see into your room, even when you're potentially receiving, very intimate services and supports. And that's it. Avoiding that is just as important as the design of the home itself. I love this shot because it also gives you another example of how it would look like just a normal, non-specialized community. If you take a look at this, this is one of our partners in Arkansas, in fact, and they were able to build this whole kind of campus. Just kind of looks like big duplex houses, maybe some kind of low-rise student housing. I would love to show this picture to people who don't know what it is and see how long it would take them to guess nursing community, because it's very deliberately designed not to look like that. You'll be able to take a look at these slides after the presentation. So I'm not going to go too far into these details, but I'm sure there are some design people out there who might want to know what a typical design looks like. Right there, it has sort of the standard house size, the resident rooms. And again, it shows you how you're able to have all private rooms, still have space for porches, dining areas, kitchens. A hearth is another important part that I didn't touch on. So there's a hearth with a real fireplace in every greenhouse home. Again, that's home to a lot of people, so we want to make sure that that touch remains. And again, here is the sort of a detail of the resident room. You also notice there's a ceiling lift track in all greenhouse rooms, and that's to provide both safety and the convenience for people who need assistance getting out of bed into the bathroom. It also is a big reduction in strain on caregivers because they don't have to necessarily do as much of the heavy lifting of picking people up every day. So there is a lift device that allows for ease of movement between the bathroom and the bedroom. But like I said, the greenhouse model is about way more than just bricks and mortar, and the universal caregiver is a key part of that. So we call them, the term that Bill Thomas came up with is shabaz, or the plural is shabazin. It's a reference to a legendary Persian folktale about a hawk, Shabaz, that protects folks in the community. I'll use the term universal caregiver just because it's easier to roll off the tongue. But in essence, the people who are on the front lines, people who are providing the care at a traditional nursing home are usually CNAs, and they're usually only tasked with helping with activities of daily living. At a greenhouse home, those universal caregivers do provide those services. They're all licensed as CNAs here in the US, but they also prepare the food based on resident menus, and they also perform some light housekeeping. So this is kind of an example of the training that you get. You have CNA training, that's a foundation requirement, and then you get additional training with cooking and maintenance. Now, this is the point of the presentation where a lot of people will say, is it hard to find people who will do that? If you're talking about a unionized labor force, are there issues with a unionized labor force maybe not necessarily wanting to go along with these additional tasks? And what I have to say is that we find there are always some individuals who are not interested in this. Like, let's say if you are converting from a traditional nursing home to a greenhouse home, but we find turnover at greenhouse homes is substantially lower than turnover in traditional nursing facilities. And there's a reason for that. It's because being a universal caregiver unlocks all of the potential for caregiving without sort of the stuff that drives caregivers away, like hierarchy, like paperwork. You know, a lot of people who get into caregiving do it because they have some connection to or some passion for the work. You know, maybe they cared for an older relative when they were younger, or they oftentimes it's a family affair. You know, people work in elder care and then their children learn the business and then they do. So this is an example of how the model unlocks that skill set. It provides more direct care time. So and it also mirrors more what you would expect from caregiving in any other setting, right? One of the big philosophical shifts is moving away in a greenhouse home is moving away from task-oriented care to more holistic care. And I always encourage people to think, when was the last time you provided care for someone at your home? Maybe it was a sick spouse or a sick child or an older adult relative who might be living with you. You don't provide that care in a checkbox way when it's someone that is living in your house, right? You don't say, okay, I gave my kid his medicine, check. He ate dinner, check. He's wearing clean clothes, check. Good night. That's not how it works. You might be folding laundry and asking your older relative how they slept the night before. You might be cooking dinner and asking if your kid took his medicine. So it more closely mirrors the type of care we're used to providing naturally. It also provides for more cross-employment opportunities. So someone who is working as a home care aide can easily step into the role of a greenhouse caregiver because it's very closely aligned with what home care folks usually provide. So one more note about the universal caregiver structure is that it is a self-guided work team. So it's people who each individual home has a set team of people who work within that home, very little sharing between homes on a given campus. Let's say there's 6 greenhouse homes on a campus. Each home has its own dedicated staff, and they are self-directed in that they handle a lot of the logistics that usually a supervisor would have to, trying to cover days off, trying to make sure everyone has those shifts that work for their schedules. These are things that they work out on their own. And you might think, oh, does that work? It does work usually often more efficiently than having sort of a main person. So that's another point, is that they are determining the day-to-day life in the greenhouse home because they are working so closely with the elder. They're preparing the food, they're doing the housekeeping, they really get to know the person. And so they can tailor the services and supports to each person's needs, wants, desires. But they're also taking more control over their employment in a way that they find empowering and makes them want to stay for the longer term. So if you take a look at these statistics, to me, it proves the point. Occupancy at greenhouse homes actually increased during the pandemic, which is something that no nursing home in the States, but no other type of nursing home in the States can really claim. We have about 15,000 nursing homes in the US. They're about 70% full nationwide, whereas greenhouse homes during the pandemic went up from about 83 to 87% full. There's demand for private rooms. There's demand for private bathrooms. Turnover is substantially lower in greenhouse homes, as you can see there. Obviously, the greenhouse number is still high. CNA turnover is still high, no matter how good your organization is, but it's substantially lower than what it was on a global basis in the United States. And then, sorry. Quality. Residents and families report significantly higher satisfaction. Providers report significantly higher direct care time between care providers and residents. And there's also research that shows that CNAs actually are able to identify changes in condition better to, for example, to avoid a hospitalization, identifying a problem before it becomes a more serious one. That's something that those deep knowing relationships that they form with the residents really helps to achieve. These are caregivers who deeply know the people who they care for. They know what is quote unquote normal and what might be indicating a change in condition. So they are able to do that. They're able to do that more efficiently and identify changes in condition earlier. So we have a question about pay in greenhouse homes versus traditional nursing homes. Because we don't operate any of the homes ourselves, and because they're all over the country, we don't have any direct influence over what they are paid, although our internal recommendation is that the starting salary be at least 15% higher for a universal caregiver than the prevailing CNA wage in that marketplace. To reflect those additional skills. And I mentioned people always ask, are there labor issues? We do have unionized greenhouse homes. It's just a matter of education, working with labor, and because they are the ones who do all the work, working with them and coming up with a solution. Usually once it is explained, I think anyone here, you can understand why if you're working at a company and all of a sudden you're asked to do a bunch of different skills, why you might be suspicious and you might push back against that, especially if you have labor union representation. I totally understand why that would be the reaction. That would be my reaction probably. But with open communication, you get to see that it's a benefit, not just for the residents, but for the workers themselves, giving them more power, more autonomy, and also more pay. I just wanted to show this slide because one of the things that we hear a lot, and I'm sure you will hear a lot about when you try to promote the greenhouse model and other alternative models like it in Canada is, well, it's just too expensive to run. I would love to do it, but we don't have the money. Here you see how it isn't as much of a cost increase as it is a cost shift. If you see there, the light green line is greenhouse homes. The dark green line is a traditional facility. And you can see that you're shifting a lot of the money away from sort of overhead, like food service, housekeeping, laundry, and shifting it to the CNAs, the direct caregivers. So again, you're not increasing the amount of money that you're spending. You're just putting it more toward what actually matters and what research and what families and what residents know matters, which is face-to-face direct care time. You're taking money away from the things that would traditionally not go that isn't resident facing, that isn't resident touching, and it goes directly to the caregivers themselves. I want to touch briefly on Pioneer Network, which is again our new partners. So when we talk about culture change, which is what they have sort of based their philosophy on since 1997, we're talking about changing the mentalities, changing the mindsets, changing the way that care is provided in all sorts of all sorts of care communities. So not just nursing homes, but assisted living communities, memory care, even organizations that serve adults with developmental and intellectual disabilities, really sort of expanding your mind and trying to change the way care is provided, even if the building itself is very institutional. So here we have what's out, according to Pioneer Network. So nurses stations. Do you have a nurses station in your house? No. If you're receiving care in your home from an RN, do you have a nurses station in your house? No. So there's no nurses stations in greenhouse homes, and it's also a Pioneer touch as well. We replace that with a small office. As you can see, there are multiple offices. There's not multiple offices in our nursing homes. No medicine carts either. Is there a medicine cart in your house? If you're receiving physical therapy at home, do you have a specific room for that set aside? Probably not. So as you see, what's in is we have outdoor space, Medicine cabinets, there's a locked medicine cabinet in every room, so no one is pushing around medicine carts like you're in a hospital. There's welcome living space instead of therapy and activity rooms. You can just do your therapy where you in your bedroom. You can do it in a communal area. There's no gym necessarily. And then there's one small office that in general looks like a home office. What's out? Set meal times, set sleep and wake times. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I would not want to be woken up early. That's probably not going to change as I age. And if it does, I would hope that my wishes would be honored in the other direction. So there's no set sleep wake times. Elders get to set their own schedule. There's no rigid activity schedules. There are flexible activities based on resident choice. So it's not just you get a calendar and here's what's going on. The staff gets to actually know, and this is both in Pioneer Network homes and greenhouse homes. What do you like to do? So for me, if maybe it would just be watching the hockey game instead of participating in an activity, or maybe it would be starting a book club because I like to read. It wouldn't just be necessarily, we're going to play bingo today. Accepting the dignity of risk is another big thing that's a philosophy shared by Greenhouse and Pioneer. And that's the idea that far too often we rob elders and people living with disabilities of their right to take calculated risks. I'm not talking about taking major risks. I'm talking about being able to go outside without asking permission. I'm talking about being able to maybe eat some food that's not that healthy for you. I'm talking about maybe helping out in the kitchen, preparing meals if that's something you're used to. That acceptance of the dignity of risk is such a key part of what we do, because everyone here on this call takes risks every day. If you like to ride your bike like I do, I take the calculated risk that I could get hurt riding a bike, but I do it because I like the exercise and the fresh air. It's also around the holidays, so I like to eat cookies and pies and have some drinks with my friends at the holiday party. All those things I know are not good for me, but it's a small risk I take because I enjoy doing it, and it helps. All of those things are part of celebrating a holiday for me. We rob elders of their ability to do that to a profound extent. And I want to make it clear that the greenhouse model is, not, it's not just about the bricks and the mortar. It's not just about what the buildings look like. It's about honoring people and letting them be adults, even if they're older, even if they have cognitive decline. They're still adults. You still get to make decisions for yourself that within reason, and you still get to live your life. And I know I said it's not a drastic risk, but I will say the Leonard Florence Center is a greenhouse operator in just outside of Boston in Chelsea, Massachusetts. And they serve elders, but they also serve adults living with chronic long-term illnesses such as ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and multiple sclerosis. And about 10 years ago, they took a bunch of their residents, many of whom use wheelchairs, some of whom were even bedbound, skydiving. Took them all skydiving, and you can look up that video, Leonard Florence Center skydiving. It's truly amazing. So that was a big risk that they all wanted to take, and they took it, and everyone lived, and everyone had a great time. And I think everyone learned a little bit of a lesson about, not underestimating what people can do. And that's a key part of it. And although I will say I would never jump out of a plane. It's not my idea of risk. But my idea of risk is, again, more on the riding bikes and eating too many cookies at Christmas. But it's all part of a continuum, and it's all part of what we try to honor at the Greenhouse Project. I want to very briefly touch on some of the ways that we are trying to increase adoption of the greenhouse model and other alternative models. And I'll do it by telling the story of how it evolved in the States. I know it's not the same in Canada, but I do want to tell some of these. I think there's a lot of overlap. I want to give a very brief history. Why don't we have more greenhouse options? Why don't we have more greenhouse options? Why don't we have other types of options for people who need a communal level of care? Why is it only sort of the traditional, old school, very sad and hospital-like institution? And from the United States perspective, the short answer is it's because you can still make money off the old system. So, we don't have a unified long-term care system in the US. Very briefly, it's covered by Medicaid and Medicare, which cover two completely different types of services. One is long-term care, one is post-acute. There are very few funding mechanisms for alternatives. So home and community-based services, affordable, independent, and assisted living. There isn't a lot of government funding for that. There is government funding for nursing home care. So that's where a lot of people end up, whether or not they require a nursing home level of care. I'll skip over this because that's a little too US specific, but these are some more answers to why there aren't more alternatives that I think are also universal across borders, in addition to what is being paid for. Inertia is one of them. You know, there's a lot of money to be made off the system that exists, so it's very difficult to convince folks to do something differently. Negative perception among funders. In the United States, there are very, very few groups that will fund the development of new nursing home or new Medicaid, which is lower income people, services and supports. There's this idea that you can't make money off of it. And so there is just a very small kind of insular group of people who fund and run nursing homes in the United States. Structural ageism. You know, I loved the appeal at the beginning to share this with your members of parliament and your members of provincial parliament, because we need to keep that pressure up. People don't like thinking about getting older. People don't like thinking about nursing homes because they never want to live there themselves. And it can often be a struggle to get even elected officials to care about it. And that's ageism, straight up. And it's also, I think, personally, I think it's linked to people's own fear of aging and death, that they don't really want to think about this, even though if we're all lucky, we will reach an age where we may need some of these services. And then adversarial framework. There is a lot of, here in the US, what I like to call funds versus fines. You have the operators just say, hey, give us more money and we'll improve everything and don't ask us any more questions. And then the resident advocacy side, often driven by attorneys, frames the issue as, we just got to make it easier to sue these providers, and we got to make it easier to find them, and then everything will get better. And that's the playbook that's been run in the US since probably the beginning of the federally funded nursing home system back in the 1960s. And it hasn't led to any change because it doesn't consider what might come in the future. How can we actually make this better? And then also, there's this adversarial framework of, no, we need to close all the nursing homes and all the care has to be moved into the home. Versus nursing home operators who would say, well, no, you can't provide that kind of care. We're always going to be here, and this is the best we can do. What we try to do at the Greenhouse Project is advocate for a yes and approach. We love all of it. I love home health. I love home and community-based services. Those should be available to anybody who wants them. But for the people who find that isolating, I had that experience in my own family, where I had a great aunt whose quality of life improved immensely once she was able to move into a communal setting and not be alone at home. We need to have better services for those as well. It's a both and. We have a community in Detroit, actually, I mentioned it earlier, that combines all sorts of different models, where you have greenhouse homes for people who require a nursing home level of care, affordable, independent, and assisted living for people who need less care and just maybe some assistance with daily living, and generally an affordable place to live, and a PACE center, which provides a variety of day services to folks. So they can come, they can get connected with activities, they can see a doctor, they can have lunch, they can get transportation to doctor's appointments, and then they can go back to their private home at night. That's all happening on one campus. And that, I think, is really exciting. I think that's kind of closer to the future than looking at it in terms of silos. So I'll do very briefly 3 flavors of reform that we see, practical steps that can be taken. So here in the States, upfront grants is one of them. You know, that's sort of the big hurdle for a lot of organizations, is how are we going to fund new infrastructure? There have been attempts on both the federal and state levels to introduce sort of government grant programs, so organizations can get upfront grants to build new, as long as they, you know, meet certain standards about person-directed care and small-scale homes. Medicaid rate increases, so the Medicaid program reimburses providers for care provided in nursing homes. These would provide targeted increases, so you get a couple extra dollars a day if you run a small home. versus a traditional nursing facility. One of the plans here in Arkansas, one of the reasons we have so many homes in Arkansas is because they were able to secure one of these reimbursement increases, literally a matter of $3 to $4 extra per person per day, has spurred the development of about 53 greenhouse homes across the state of Arkansas. And then other mechanisms. There is a government-backed lending program for folks who are interested in investing in nursing homes and assisted living communities here. So we often say, why don't we change some of the rules around that federal program so it incentivizes development of better alternatives? Tax credits, certificate of need reform, which I won't get into, but it's just an example of another sort of state level law or regulation that really protects the status quo, so to speak. So we are at the end of my prepared slides. I see we have some questions. And I just want to conclude with two thoughts. One is something that I try to tell the audiences in Canada as much as I can, which is I am kind of jealous of where you all are in terms of political will to change. I mentioned we have 15,000 nursing homes here in the United States. They're about 70% full, and there is absolutely no push to build new infrastructure. We're overbedded. There's too many nursing homes in this country to serve the elders that we have. Everything I have learned about Canada from keeping up with the news, working with other groups across the country, is that there is, especially in Ontario, there is momentum toward building new infrastructure for older folks, and an acknowledgement of the fact that there is an underbedding, there is an under availability of these services. And that represents such a philosophical leap over where we are and such a big step forward. So I just want to say that as frustrating as I'm sure it is for a lot of you out there, there is a push. You know, the question is not whether to build new at all. It's just what types of things can we build? And I know there's a lot of people on this call who are working very, very hard to make sure that it's not just the same old, same old. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I open it up for the questions is there is one organization, and I need to get the name of it, which is why I am looking at my phone. So excuse me. There is one organization in Canada that is doing some work. It's the Home Society in Hamilton. They are looking to retrofit an existing independent living space and create a greenhouse home for assisted living support. So they are hoping to learn from that sort of one site pilot and make it into, hopefully replicate that across Ontario. The government of Alberta is also looking into the idea of having small homes to serve a diverse population. So not just aging, not just older folks, but people living with disabilities, people with mental health issues. And as I'm sure a lot of you know, that's all connected. You know, I often say we don't necessarily have a care problem we don't have just an elder care or health care for people living with disabilities and mental illness. It's not just a care issue, it's a housing issue. And so having these affordable housing options for as many people as possible and adapting them for use in specific populations is really very important. I want to also just note that in the US, it's about 80% of the greenhouse homes are licensed as nursing homes, but about the remaining 20 are a diverse group of assisted living. We do have a couple of communities that serve adults living with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I also mentioned the Leonard Florence Center in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, that does specialty services for people living with ALS and MS. So this is, you know, whatever kind of care has traditionally been provided in really inhumane institutions, the greenhouse model and other small home models can be adapted to do that. And we find that very exciting. So I want to answer some of these questions that I see here. We've got a good one. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to sort of start the Q&A for you, Alex, if I could.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So there's a couple of questions here. They're about dignity of risk, and it's a great concept, which I really like. The issue being, how do you deal with changing levels of independence and so on? Like you're allowing people to go in and out, which is wonderful outside and so on. How do you do that? And certainly if you have somebody with dementia, we have locked units here because we keep them locked for safety reasons. How do you manage that?
It's a great question. We are firm believers in dementia without locks, which I know is, it can be kind of a scary thing to think about. To be clear, all of our greenhouse homes are locked, there are locks from the inside. You do need to be let in a lot of cases. Actually, we locked ourselves out of a greenhouse home when I was down there in April because we didn't have the door code. So it does happen. There are locks and there is security to make sure, people coming in and out, or we know who they are. But the idea is to have as little restriction as possible. And so with the outdoor space, the outdoor space itself is enclosed. You can't get out from the outdoor space, but you can go through the door and out into the outdoor space on your own. Each individual care plan as well, it's about what works best for the elder and the family. So there could obviously be conversations about how to best handle that. But in general, our care philosophy around people living with dementia is to focus on their retained abilities, to not frame what they're doing as negative behaviors, but really trying to interrogate why are these behaviors occurring and figuring out ways to support them. So we try not to think about it as wandering or pacing, but this person just likes to walk around. They just got to walk around. So how can we figure out a way to make it so they can, take laps around the community in a way that's not disruptive or dangerous? There's a great story that some of our colleagues tell of someone who would become very agitated at the same time every day. Until they realized they were just used to eating a certain food at that time of day. And so what we perceive as negative behavior or aggression or anger was just a person expressing a human need, like, hey, it's 3 o'clock, where's my cookie? Or where's my cookie and coffee? That's what I ate every day at 3 o'clock for 30 years. They can't express it that way, but that's what they're trying to say. So it's a very person-directed, person-centered philosophy. And I can't say it's always easy. I can't say it's always, the easiest thing. But usually it ends up we get much better results in the long run than restraining people or giving them powerful antipsychotic drugs, which is just inhumane.
That's great. And just one question related to that: do you have what is your rate of falls?
So I don't have the number off the top of my head. I will say that research has shown it is very slightly higher than in a traditional nursing home, very slightly. And that is kind of a result of the fact that the philosophy of the model allows people to have a little bit more independence. Okay. It's really about finding a balance and that dignity of risk there, making sure that people don't, the example that our CEO, Susan Ryan, always gives is she was a nurse when she was right at a nursing school in the 1970s. They were physically restraining elders. That was the best practice. She was taught to tie people to beds and chairs. And, that really started her journey toward elder care reform, as I think it would for a lot of people. But that is sort of the framework that we work in. We don't ever want to go back to that space. No. And we are willing to accept slightly higher falls. And again, this is something that's discussed with residents and families when they move in. We are not trying to prevent falls at all costs. We are trying to provide the best life possible with the correct balance of risk and safety, not going all towards safety.
There's a couple of questions around funding always. You mentioned about state funding, government, national funding, and so on. In Canada, we have government reporting requirements that really direct what we are able to do. And so how do you manage that? Do you have actually any funding reporting requirements to those that are funding your homes? Do you have to meet certain criteria?
Yep. So when I said that 80% of nursing homes in the States of our greenhouse homes in the States are licensed as nursing homes, that means they have the same exact reporting requirements as a traditional facility. They have to meet all of the same federal and state, and in some cases, local health code, safety code, regulations, all of that. So here in the States, that's important because if you're not licensed, you can't receive government funding for those services. So the ones that do operate as nursing homes do receive that Medicare and Medicaid funding. The remaining 20% is kind of a grab bag. Some states will cover assisted living, independent living under the Medicaid program. Many states won't. So some of our partners that operate assisted living, some of them are getting government funding, others are not. But yes, it's I know I said reduced paperwork. They still have all the positions that are required under law. But it's still, that becomes more of a centralized role, centralized job, so that the direct day-to-day caregivers, aren't the ones who are also responsible for filling out all the paperwork and all the requirements, but they receive the same oversight as traditional nursing homes.
So an interesting question then, if what would be the cost then for someone living in a greenhouse model versus a traditional long-term care home? What would be the difference in cost?
So it's a tricky question to answer because very few people pay privately for nursing home care in the US. It's usually, so very briefly, it's Medicare, which is our long-term, our general healthcare insurance for adults older, 65 and older. That will cover a short stay in a nursing home. So after an acute healthcare event, so let's say, a stroke or a fall. Medicaid, meanwhile, covers long-term stays. So if you live in a nursing home, that becomes covered under Medicaid. The tricky part about that is that Medicaid was not designed to be a long-term healthcare benefit. Medicaid came about in the mid-1960s as a social safety net for low-income adults and families. So it is essentially a healthcare provider for low-income people. Just so happens that when you're older and you spend down all your resources, you qualify as a lower income person. And so Medicaid will cover your stay there. It's a very messed up system. You would never design it that way from scratch. People literally do have to spend themselves into poverty sometimes to receive this. And, I mentioned my great aunt's experience. She had to do the same thing. My family was not low income, but eventually it got to a point where she got Medicaid subsidies to stay in an assisted living community because she qualified. That said, Medicaid covers about 49, a little under half of the residents at greenhouse homes are fully covered under Medicaid. Medicaid does pay for this kind of private room care, so they're not really paying much of anything at all. In places where there is a private pay difference, it could be a couple $100 per day, $50, a couple $100 a day different. But our goal, and this is something that I embrace, one of the criticisms of the greenhouse model, and I fully embrace it, and agree with it, is that historically it has been a product for more affluent people. It has been a product that's, been available more so to well-off white people in suburban and rural areas. And that's something that we're really working to change through the advocacy over Medicaid, trying to get more government funding for these kinds of services, trying to make private rooms the default, because as I'm sure is the case in Canada as well, a lot of this poor care and a lot of the really worst nursing homes, communities of color and low-income communities shoulder that burden more. If you are not white and if you are low income, you are way, way, way more likely to end up in a very bad place versus a greenhouse home. And so we are really working to fix that, but money is always the issue, right?
Right. There was one brief question here. We're running out of time. The use of technology in your whole greenhouse system. Do you see this taking more of a front and center approach here?
Absolutely. We love technology, but crucially, we always want to make sure that technology is person-centered and person-directed.
Right.
So for us, we're less about having robots take over care or, don't get me started on robotic pets. As someone who owns 2 pets myself, I can't imagine being given a toy and being told it's just as good. But we like to look for technologies that make maybe life a little bit easier for caregivers and residents, and also technology that helps keep residents connected with loved ones, the outside world. That was big during COVID. I feel like, I loved that we framed this as the world was paying attention to nursing homes, and now it's not so much anymore. Now that sort of the worst of COVID is over. And that became front and center, this idea, we got to have fast Wi-Fi, we got to have video communication, we got to have all that for elders. You don't hear about as much of that anymore, but that is still very important. So I would say short answer is we love technology, but that technology has to be about enhancing people's lives, not replacing human interaction or just simply to save a couple bucks on staffing.
Well, we've come to the bewitching hour, and I'd like to thank you, Alex, for just a wonderful, informative presentation. You're doing such great work, and I do think we were seeing a bit of a philosophical change in our country. I just wish it would come quicker and show more results faster, and so we could move forward. But it's wonderful to know that there's some movement happening in Alberta and in the Ontario area as well. So again, thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. And I'm now going to turn it over to Sam.
Thank you so much, Marg, for an always skilled Q&A facilitation. And Alex, on behalf of everyone on the call today, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your perspective with us.
Of course. Thank
And
you.
I am certain that you'll have inspired people to think about how to change the Ontario sector to be one that's more in line with greenhouse philosophy, models, and so on. It's a little bit preaching to the choir, but you've given us a lot to think about. So on behalf of the FCO team and everyone on the line today, thank you again to Alex Spanko and to the CARP Ottawa team. So once again, the session has been recorded, originally presented on December 6th, 2023. Check out the FCO website and the CARP Ottawa website for information about upcoming sessions and other relevant info. So once again, I'm Sam Peck, Executive Director of Family Councils of Ontario, and thank you so much for spending your time with us this afternoon. Take care, be well, and we hope to see you again.